Imagine a sound so loud it could be heard across oceans. A blast so violent it shattered instruments thousands of miles away, and a sky so dark it swallowed the sun for days. This is not a movie plot. This is Earth, August 27, 1883, when Krakatoa, a small island volcano in Indonesia, erupted with a fury the world had never seen. It wasn't just an eruption, it was the loudest sound in recorded history. A shockwave that circled the globe 7 times. Tsunamis, taller than palm trees, crashing into coastlines. Sunsets painted blood red. From London to New York, the Earth, for once, made itself impossible to ignore. In the next few minutes, we'll journey into that day when the world went dark. We'll uncover the science, the human stories, and the strange legacy Krakatoa left behind. So buckle up, because if Earth ever had a microphone, this was the day it cranked the volume all the way to 11 and blew the speakers. The Pacific Ocean is beautiful on the surface, blue waters shimmering like glass, endless horizons fading into the sky. But beneath this calm lies the most dangerous chain on Earth, the Ring of Fire. Stretching nearly 40,000 kilometers, it is home to 75% of the world's active volcanoes and nearly 90% of its earthquakes. Here, tectonic plates crash, grind, and dive beneath one another. The Earth does not sleep in this belt. It breathes, it groans, and sometimes it explodes. Indonesia sits directly in the bullseye of this restless ring. 17,000 islands scattered like emeralds on the sea. Beautiful, but fragile. Nowhere else on Earth has more active volcanoes. Over 130 still alive with fire. For millions of Indonesians, this is daily life. The ground shakes. Ash falls from the sky. And yet, from that same ash, rice fields and fruit groves grow. Soil so rich it feeds entire generations. It is a land where beauty and danger are inseparable, like light and shadow, a gift and a curse, as if the Earth were a landlord who burns down your house every few decades, but also gives you the most fertile garden in the world. Among these islands stood Krakatoa, a small volcano in the Sunda Strait, between Java and Sumatra. For centuries, it looked harmless, a jungle-covered mound rising out of the water. Sailors passed it without notice. Fishermen cast their nets nearby. Children played on its shores. But appearances deceive. Krakatoa had erupted before. Records speak of a great eruption in 416 AD, and again in the 1600s. By the 19th century, it had been silent for nearly 200 years, and silence in a volcano is never peace. It is only pressure, waiting. Beneath Krakatoa's slopes, magma churned. The island was a cork in a bottle that had been shaken for centuries. And pressure, Earth always reminds us, is patient, but never eternal. The year was 1883. Krakatoa had been silent for nearly 2 centuries, but deep beneath its slopes, silence was an illusion. Magma was rising, restless, pressing against the Earth's crust like a fist against glass. In May of that year, the first warnings came. Fishermen at sea swore they saw columns of smoke rising from the island. By June, the smoke became impossible to ignore, plumes climbing thousands of feet into the sky. The people of Java and Sumatra watched as their quiet neighbor suddenly grew a fiery crown. At night, faint glows flickered at the summit. By day, the air filled with ash. It drifted across villages, settling on rooftops, on crops, on the shoulders of farmers who looked up in unease. But here's the truth about volcanoes. They rarely explode without a prelude. Like an orchestra tuning its instruments, Krakatoa was preparing for its performance, and the sound check was terrifying. Explosions echoed across the Sunda Strait, some so powerful they rattled windows in Batavia, nearly 150 kilometers away. Ships passing nearby reported showers of pumice falling onto their decks, hot stones hissing as they hit the sea, and still, life went on. Markets opened, prayers were said, children played, because what else could people do? Krakatoa had rumbled before, and always gone quiet again. But this time was different. This was not the mountain clearing its throat. This was the first act of a tragedy the world would never forget. On August 26, 1883, the world began to change. Krakatoa had been grumbling for months, but now it was ready to roar. The first explosion came just after noon, a thunderclap so loud it echoed across the Sunda Strait. Villagers thought it was cannon fire from distant warships. Sailors scrambled on deck, staring at a column of ash rising more than 20 kilometers into the sky. The sea boiled, the air grew thick, and yet, this was only the opening note. The second explosion tore through the night. It rattled windows in Batavia, 150 kilometers away. Ash fell like black snow. Birds fell from the sky, suffocated mid-flight. Darkness spread over villages as lanterns were lit in the middle of the day. The island was no longer an island. It was a furnace. By dawn, on August 27th, came the third blast. This one was so violent it triggered a tsunami that raced across the strait. Waves smashed into coastal towns, sweeping away homes, markets, temples. The noise was deafening, but it was still not the final word. Then, at 10:02 a.m., the fourth explosion. It was not just sound, it was annihilation. The island itself shattered. 2/3 of Krakatoa simply vanished, blown apart in an instant. The explosion was heard 3,000 miles away, in Australia, in India, even faintly in the Indian Ocean islands of Mauritius. It was and remains the loudest sound ever recorded in human history. Shockwaves circled the globe 7 times. Barometers in London jumped, as if the earth itself had hiccuped, and the sky turned strange. Sunsets across Europe and America glowed crimson for months, painted by the fine volcanic dust drifting through the atmosphere. Krakatoa had not just erupted, it had announced itself to the entire world. A single volcano on a small forgotten island had shaken the planet. When Krakatoa's fourth explosion ripped the island apart, the sea itself was thrown into chaos. Entire cliffs of rock collapsed into the water. The caldera floor sank, and the ocean, displaced with unimaginable force, surged outward in waves that defied belief. The first walls of water struck the coastlines within minutes. Tsunamis taller than coconut palms rose from the sea and hurled themselves onto the shores of Java and Sumatra. Fishing villages vanished in an instant. Boats were lifted like toys. carried inland and smashed against rice fields and forests? In the town of Anjar, a bustling port on the western tip of Java, people had only seconds to react. Eyewitnesses described the ocean withdrawing, an eerie silence, and then a roar like the sky itself collapsing. The wave that followed swept through the town with merciless speed. Houses, markets, even stone buildings crumbled like sandcastles. Nothing remained. Farther along the coast, the devastation was no less brutal. Merak, Teluk Beton, Ketimbang, names that once belonged to thriving coastal communities, were erased from maps. When Krakatoa shattered the skies, it did not stop with tsunamis. Its reach spread far beyond Indonesia, across oceans, across continents. In the weeks that followed, fine volcanic ash drifted into the upper atmosphere. Carried by winds, it circled the globe like a ghostly veil. Daylight dimmed, noons turned to twilight, and sunsets blazed with unnatural fire. In London, the skies glowed crimson, as if the city burned in silence. In New York, evenings turned blood red. Painters of the era, including Edvard Munch, would later capture these skies, claiming they inspired visions of dread. The world had inherited Krakatoa's palette, a sky painted with ash, fear, and beauty. But the spectacle had a cost. For years after the eruption, global temperatures fell by more than 1 degree Celsius. Harvests failed, frost struck in summer. The world learned, once again, that a single mountain could alter the climate of the entire Earth. Across villages in Java and Sumatra, survivors spoke of living under a dark canopy. Days without sunlight, nights without stars. The silence of crops that would not grow. The silence of families who would not return. For them, this was not just a global phenomenon. It was grief, written across the sky. Krakatoa's voice had circled the Earth 7 times in sound, and now its shadow circled the Earth in light. A single eruption, echoing in the air, the seas, and the heavens. A reminder that one small island could change the world. What made Krakatoa so catastrophic? Why did this volcano, among thousands on Earth, unleash such fury? The answer lies in the very bones of our planet. Krakatoa sat on a subduction zone, a place where the Indo-Australian plate dives beneath the Eurasian plate. Here, the Earth is constantly recycling itself. Rock melts into magma, pressure builds, and eventually, it must find a way out. But Krakatoa wasn't just any volcano. It was what scientists call a stratovolcano, steep, layered, and dangerously unstable. Its magma was thick, sticky, and full of gas. Instead of flowing like gentle lava in Hawaii, it trapped pressure, turning the mountain into a time bomb. Think of it as shaking a soda bottle. The more you shake, the more violent the release. And Krakatoa had been shaking for centuries. When the final explosion came, scientists estimate it released the energy of 200 megatons of TNT. That's more than 10,000 times the power of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. This wasn't just a volcanic eruption. It was Earth reminding us of its raw, uncontainable power. When Krakatoa tore itself apart in 1883, many believed the island was gone forever. 2/3 of it had vanished into the sea. Where there was once solid land, there was now only a drowned caldera, a wound in the ocean floor. For decades, the place seemed lifeless, a watery grave marked by silence and memory. But nature has a way of reclaiming what is lost, and from that destruction, life began to return. By the early 20th century, seeds carried by wind and waves drifted onto the barren remnants. Birds arrived, nesting on the black sand beaches. Insects followed. What had been an ash-choked wasteland slowly transformed into a living laboratory of rebirth. And then, in 1927, the sea itself began to stir. From the heart of the old caldera, a new island rose. The people of Indonesia called it Anak Krakatau, the child of Krakatoa, a fiery heir to its parents' throne. At first, Anak Krakatau was small, barely visible above the waves, but it grew, erupting, collapsing, and rebuilding itself again and again. Today, it stands more than 300 meters high, and it is still alive, still changing, and around it, life thrives. Coral reefs sparkle in the clear waters of the Sunda Strait. Tropical forests cloak the surviving fragments of Krakatoa. What was once death and ruin has become a sanctuary of resilience. Krakatoa's legacy is not only destruction, it is proof that from ash, from silence, from unimaginable violence, the earth can begin again. The eruption of Krakatoa did not end in 1883. Its shadow still stretches across our world today. For scientists, it remains one of the most important case studies in Earth's violent power. Every seismograph, every volcanic monitoring system, every tsunami warning siren, they all carry lessons learned from Krakatoa. It showed us how one eruption could ripple across oceans, disrupt global climate, and alter human history. But its impact isn't just found in textbooks. It lingers in our skies, in our cultures, in our fears. The phrase Krakatoa, east of Java, still echoes in popular imagination, shaping novels, films, and even metaphors for disaster. When the world seeks an example of unstoppable natural fury, it returns again and again to that August day in 1883. And Anak Krakatau, the child of Krakatoa, reminds us that this story is unfinished. In 2018, a major eruption collapsed part of its cone, triggering another deadly tsunami that struck Java and Sumatra. Hundreds were killed. The same waters that once swallowed towns in 1883 rose again, as if history itself had stirred from sleep. The cycle of fire and water continues. Krakatoa is no longer just an island, no longer just a memory. It is a warning written in stone and sea that the earth is alive, that silence is never permanent, and that the line between life and destruction is thinner than we dare believe. From the ashes of one eruption came global science, global awareness, and a sobering truth that in the face of Earth's fury, we are small, but in remembering, we are also prepared. Krakatoa was not just an eruption, it was a teacher, a violent one, but a teacher nonetheless. In a single day, it showed humanity how fragile our world can be and how deeply connected we all are. It taught us that the earth has no borders. The sound was heard across oceans. The waves touched distant shores. The ash dimmed skies from Asia to Europe. What happens on one small island can echo through the entire planet. It also taught us humility. We measure our power in cities built, in machines forged, in wars fought. But against the roar of a volcano, those achievements are dust. Krakatoa reminded us that we live not above nature but within it, and that our survival depends on listening to the Earth's whisper before they become screams. And finally, it gave us resilience. From death came new life. From silence, a new volcano. From ash, fertile soil to feed generations. Even destruction can carry the seeds of rebirth. That is Krakatoa's greatest lesson. The Earth can break, but it can also heal. And so can we. Today, when Anak Krakatau rumbles, scientists listen. When the seas draw back, coastal towns prepare. The world is more watchful, more aware, because of what happened in 1883. And though the mountain may rise and fall again, its legacy remains, not just a story of catastrophe, but a reminder of endurance. Krakatoa spoke once in fire and thunder. The question for us now is whether we are willing to listen. Krakatoa was just one chapter. Many more untold stories of our planet await. Subscribe and be part of the next discovery.